When the first light of morning breaks through your window, it's not just another sunrise. It's God whispering, "Here is another chance to walk with me." Each new day is an unspoken invitation from heaven to begin again, to reset, to realign, and to receive divine strength. The first moments of your morning have the power to shape your entire day. If you start your day rushing, worrying, or chasing after tasks, you'll carry that same chaos with you. But if you begin your day in the quiet presence of God, your soul finds peace before the world finds you. You see, the most successful days don't begin with plans. They begin with prayer. Because when you talk to the Creator before you face His creation, you walk through life with divine clarity. So many people wake up each morning and immediately pick up their phones, scroll through endless messages, and invite the noise of the world before the voice of heaven. But imagine instead the first words out of your mouth being, "Lord, walk with me today." That one prayer can change everything. It's not a long prayer, it's a surrendered one. It tells God, "I don't want to walk in my strength today. I want to walk in yours." And when you make that your habit, you'll discover that no matter how chaotic the world becomes, your heart remains anchored in peace. Prayer in the morning is not about routine, it's about relationship. It's not a duty, it's a dialogue with the one who holds your destiny in His hands. When you wake up and seek God first, something supernatural happens. The same Spirit that hovered over the chaos in Genesis begins to hover over your life. He brings order to your confusion, wisdom to your decisions, and calm to your heart. The peace that comes from God's presence in the morning is not ordinary, it's divine. It shields you before you step into conflict. It empowers you before you face temptation, and it strengthens you before you encounter challenges. It's like putting on spiritual armor before the battle begins. Without it, you might win some fights, but with it, you walk in victory before the fight even starts. Let me tell you this, the enemy is not afraid of your schedule, he is afraid of your surrender. He trembles when he sees a believer start the day on their knees. Because prayer at dawn is not weakness. It's warfare. It's where your spirit is recharged, your faith is renewed, and your focus is restored. When you pray before you move, heaven moves before you. So instead of saying, "I'm too busy to pray," start saying, "I'm too busy not to pray." Because the more demanding your day is, the more desperate your soul should be for God's direction. There's a powerful secret hidden in those quiet morning moments. God speaks clearest when the world is still. That's why Jesus often withdrew early in the morning to pray. He understood that before facing crowds, he needed communion. Before facing people's expectations, he needed his Father's direction. And if the Son of God himself made time to connect with heaven before facing the day, how much more should we? It's in those first minutes of prayer that we exchange anxiety for assurance and fear for faith. Every morning you stand at a crossroads, the path of control or the path of surrender. One says, "I'll handle it on my own." The other says, "Lord, guide my steps." And when you choose the path of surrender, the rest of your day falls into divine alignment. Your meetings flow smoother, your reactions become gentler, and even your setbacks turn into setups for something greater. That's the mysterious beauty of walking with God. He doesn't just change your day, He changes your heart. So, when the alarm rings tomorrow, don't see it as a call to rush. See it as a call to rise. Rise not just out of your bed, but into His presence. Before the noise begins, let heaven hear your voice. Before the world demands your attention, give your attention to the one who gave you the day. Whisper those sacred words. "Lord, walk with me today." And watch how that single prayer becomes the foundation for strength, peace, and divine favor that no force on earth can take away. Faith is not a comfortable walk. It is a courageous one. When you choose to walk by faith, And not by sight, you are choosing to trust the unseen over the visible, the eternal over the temporary, and the promise over the present pain. It's easy to trust God when the path is clear, when the answers are visible, and when life seems predictable. But true faith is built in the moments when you can't see what's ahead. It's in those seasons of uncertainty where your belief is tested, your patience is refined, and your character is strengthened. Walking by faith means saying, God, I may not understand where you're leading me, but I trust that your hand will never let me fall. The beauty of walking by faith is that it shifts your focus from circumstances to promises. The human eye can only see what's happening now, but faith sees what God is preparing next. Sight will always remind you of your limitations, but faith reminds you of His limitless power. When you rely on sight, fear becomes your guide, but when you rely on faith, courage takes the lead. It's not about ignoring reality, it's about elevating your trust above it. Every great move of God begins with someone willing to step out before seeing the full picture. Abraham didn't see the promised land before he left his home. Peter didn't see solid ground before stepping out of the boat, and David didn't see victory before facing Goliath. They moved not because they knew, but because they believed. Sometimes, faith will take you through storms rather than around them. The waves may rise, the winds may roar, and your heart may tremble, but remember this: Jesus is still in your boat. When you walk by sight, the storm looks bigger. When you walk by faith, your Savior looks greater. God never promised a life free of struggle, but He promised His presence in the middle of it. And when you keep your eyes fixed on Him instead of your fear, you'll find strength you never knew you had. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to see God's hand move. Every delay becomes a setup for divine timing, and every hardship becomes a testimony in the making. Faith is not a passive feeling, it's an active choice. It means waking up each day and saying, I don't know what today holds, but I know who holds it. It's trusting when you have more questions than answers, and obeying when the instructions don't make sense. Faith does not ask for explanations. It walks in expectation. When you stop depending on what you can see, you make room for God to show you what only He can do. The truth is, your miracles don't happen on the path of certainty, they happen on the path of surrender. So keep walking even when the road is unclear. Keep believing even when the evidence seems silent. Because when you walk by faith, every step you take draws you closer to the fulfillment of God's promise. To walk by faith and not by sight is to live in a constant posture of trust. Even when everything around you feels uncertain, it is the art of stepping forward when the path ahead is hidden, of believing when the evidence seems absent, and of standing strong when everything within you wants to retreat. Sight looks at what is and trembles, but faith looks at what will be and dares to move. Every person who has ever accomplished something extraordinary in the kingdom of God has walked this road of unseen trust. Faith doesn't ask for proof before it moves. It moves because it trusts the one who has already spoken. It's not about blind optimism. It's about divine confidence that God's plan is perfect even when you don't understand it. Life will always present you with moments that test the depth of your faith. There will be seasons when God seems silent, when the doors you prayed for remain closed, and when every effort appears to fall short. In those moments, your natural sight will tell you to give up, but your faith will whisper, keep going. You must learn to let that whisper be louder than your worry. Faith is not the denial of reality, it is the declaration that reality is not the final word. When you walk by faith, you no longer depend on what you see, because you know that God is working in the unseen realm, orchestrating every detail for your good. The delay you're facing is not denial, it's divine design. Faith requires courage. It calls you to step into waters that seem deep, to face mountains that look immovable, and to walk through valleys that feel endless. It doesn't mean the fear disappears. It means you move forward despite it. God never asks you to see the whole staircase. He only asks you to take the first step. Each step of obedience, no matter how small, becomes a seed of trust that grows into a harvest of blessing. The people who live by sight chase comfort. Those who live by faith chase calling. And when you pursue your calling, God provides the courage, the resources, and the strength you need along the way. Sometimes, faith will lead you into uncomfortable places, not to break you, but to build you. It's in the tension between what you see and what you believe that your spirit is strengthened. When Abraham left everything familiar to follow God's promise, he didn't have a map, he had a word. When Peter stepped out of the boat, he didn't have certainty, he had trust. And when David faced Goliath, he didn't have armor, he had faith. These moments remind us that walking by faith is not about security, it's about surrender. It's trusting that God's hand will hold you even when your eyes can't see where He's leading. Every day is an opportunity to live this truth. The more you rely on sight, the more fear will control you. But the more you rely on faith, the more peace will guide you. You don't need to understand every step, you just need to know who walks beside you. When you stop demanding to see before you believe, you unlock the supernatural favor of God over your life. And even when the path seems hidden, your faith becomes the light that leads you forward, one step at a time, into the promise that God has already prepared. There comes a time in every person's journey when strength runs low, when courage wavers, and when the weight of life feels too heavy to carry. It's in those moments that we discover one of the greatest truths of faith. God does His best work through our weakness. When you say, "Lord, walk with me," you're not admitting defeat, you're opening the door for divine strength to flow through you. God doesn't look for the strongest, the most talented, or the most capable. He looks for the willing. He looks for the heart that says, "I can't do this on my own." Because it's only when you reach the end of yourself that His power can begin to work fully in you. We often try to hide our weaknesses, thinking they make us unworthy or incapable. But God is not repelled by your weakness. He is drawn to it. Your limitations are not barriers. They're invitations for Him to reveal His greatness. When you give your brokenness to God, He transforms it into beauty. When you hand Him your fear, He turns it into faith. When you surrender your pain, He molds it into purpose. That's the mystery of divine transformation. What the world sees as failure, God sees as fertile ground for miracles. Every scar you carry can become a testimony of grace when you let Him use it. Think of Moses, who said he couldn't speak clearly, yet God used him to deliver a nation. Think of Gideon, who called himself the least in his family, yet God called him a mighty warrior. Think of David, a shepherd boy overlooked by everyone, chosen by God to be king. Each of these people had weaknesses that should have disqualified them, but those weaknesses became the very places where God's strength shone brightest. That's how God works. He takes the fragile and fills it with power. He takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary. The same Spirit that empowered them is the same Spirit available to you today. When you face moments of exhaustion, when your strength is gone and your heart feels weary, that's the perfect moment to lean into God's presence. You don't have to pretend to be strong, you just have to be honest. Tell Him, "Lord, I'm tired, but I still trust you." That prayer of surrender is not weakness, it's worship. It declares that your hope doesn't rest on your own ability, but on His faithfulness. And the moment you do that, divine strength begins to rise within you. You may not feel it instantly, but deep in your spirit, a quiet power begins to stir. A power that enables you to endure what once seemed impossible. When God turns your weakness into strength, He doesn't just change your situation, He changes you. You begin to walk with a new confidence, not in yourself, but in the one who walks beside you. You no longer see your struggles as setbacks, but as sacred spaces where God's grace meets your humanity. And every time you fall, you rise a little stronger, a little wiser, and a little closer to the heart of the one who promised to never leave you nor forsake you. Prayer is not a routine act or a religious obligation. It is a divine exchange between your weakness and God's strength. It is the invisible shield that guards your spirit, the quiet fire that fuels your faith, and the sacred key that unlocks the power of heaven in your daily life. When you begin to understand the true power of prayer, you stop seeing it as something you have to do and start seeing it as something you get to do. Prayer is your direct access to the throne of grace, where you can bring your fears, your dreams, and your burdens to the one who holds the universe in his hands. Every time you pray, you are building a wall of spiritual protection around your heart, your home, and your purpose. Many people think prayer is simply talking to God, but it's much more than that. It's aligning your heart with His. When you enter into prayer, you are not just speaking, you are listening, surrendering, and allowing God to recenter your thoughts. It's in those sacred moments of stillness that He equips you for the battles you haven't yet faced. Life will always bring challenges, but prayer gives you the strength to meet them without fear. It prepares your spirit before the storm arrives. That's why a person who prays regularly walks differently. They carry peace in chaos, confidence in uncertainty, and hope when others see only despair. When you rise in the morning and whisper a prayer, you are clothing yourself in divine armor. You may not see it, but heaven responds. Angels stand guard. The enemy's schemes lose power. Fear begins to fade, because prayer doesn't just change situations, it changes atmospheres. It transforms your mind from anxious to assured, your heart from restless to rooted. And the more you pray, the stronger your spiritual foundation becomes. When you live in prayer, you live in preparation. You're never caught off guard because your spirit is already anchored in God's presence. Prayer is not about fancy words or perfect timing. It's about honesty. God is not impressed by eloquence. He is moved by sincerity. When you talk to Him with a genuine heart, you unlock His guidance and favor in ways you cannot comprehend. Even when you don't have the strength to speak, the Holy Spirit intercedes for you. Every sigh, every tear, every silent cry is heard by heaven. That's why prayer is not a small thing. It's your greatest weapon. It's what keeps your faith alive when the fire of life tries to burn it out. A day without prayer is like a soldier stepping into battle without armor. But when you pray, you are not fighting alone. You are partnering with the power of God Himself. You invite His wisdom into your decisions, His strength into your struggles, and His peace into your chaos. Prayer may not always change your circumstances immediately, but it will always change you. And when you are changed, you carry an unshakable calm into every situation, because you know that no matter what comes your way, you are covered, protected, and guided by the hand of God. When you allow God to guide your steps, you invite divine clarity into a world that thrives on confusion. Life often feels like a maze of choices, responsibilities, and distractions, and it can be easy to lose direction in the noise. But when you seek God's guidance, He brings order to the chaos and purpose to your path. His voice may not always thunder from the heavens. More often, it comes as a gentle whisper in your heart, nudging you toward peace. The moment you let Him lead, everything begins to align, not always according to your plan, but according to His perfect design. You begin to see that God's guidance isn't about controlling you. It's about freeing you from the weight of uncertainty. There is a special kind of calm that comes when you trust that God is directing your way. It's a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a quiet confidence that carries you even when the road ahead looks unclear. The world teaches you to rely on logic, to analyze every decision, and to depend on your understanding. But God calls you to lean not on your own wisdom. His guidance often leads through unexpected paths. Doors you never thought would open suddenly swing wide, and places you feared to step into become the very ground of your blessing. What feels like a detour to you may actually be divine direction. The delays, the rejections, and even the disappointments are not mistakes. They are strategic steps in God's plan to bring you exactly where you need to be. When you follow your own will, life feels heavy, full of pressure and confusion. But when you surrender and say, Lord, show me the way, a divine shift happens. You stop striving and start flowing in His rhythm. His timing replaces your anxiety, and His wisdom replaces your worry. It doesn't mean the journey becomes easy, but it becomes purposeful. You begin to understand that even the obstacles along your path are opportunities for growth. God's guidance often unfolds one step at a time. He doesn't reveal the whole map because faith grows best in trust. Each day becomes an invitation to walk closely with Him, to listen, and to obey even when you can't see the full picture. There are moments when His guidance will challenge you to step out of your comfort zone. He may ask you to let go of something that feels secure or to move in a direction that seems uncertain. But that's where transformation happens. The peace that comes from following God's lead is not found in the absence of risk, but in the assurance that He goes before you. When you trust His direction, you no longer chase what you think is best. You receive what He knows is best. His way may be higher, His pace may be slower, but His destination is always greater. When you allow Him to guide your heart, your decisions begin to reflect His wisdom, and your life becomes a testimony of divine alignment. The path may twist and turn, but with God as your guide, you are never lost. You are being led toward purpose, peace, and fulfillment that only He can give. You are never truly alone, even when silence surrounds you and the world seems distant. The presence of God is constant, steady, and unbreakable, a companionship that never fades, even when you can't feel it. There are moments in life when people will leave, when friends will fail, and when circumstances will make you feel invisible. But even in those moments, God whispers, I am with you. His presence is not dependent on your emotions, it's anchored in His promise. When you walk through dark valleys, He walks beside you. When the path grows heavy, He carries you. When your tears fall quietly in the night, He gathers every one of them and turns them into strength. That's the assurance you carry as a believer. You are never abandoned, never forgotten, never unloved. Many people search for comfort in human connection, but even the strongest relationships can't fill the space only God was meant to occupy. People can encourage you, but they cannot sustain you. Only God can give you the peace that surpasses understanding, the kind that remains even when everything around you crumbles. His presence doesn't always remove the storm, but it gives you stability within it. You might not always see His hand, but if you listen closely, you will sense His heart. It's in the quiet, in the stillness, where His nearness becomes undeniable. The moment you realize that He walks with you, fear begins to lose its voice, and hope starts to rise again. When loneliness tries to creep in, remember that God is not far, He is within you. He doesn't just visit, He dwells. Every step you take, He takes with you. Every breath you draw, He fills with purpose. You may feel unseen, but heaven sees you. You may feel small, but to God you are significant beyond measure. His presence isn't a feeling you chase, it's a truth you live by. Sometimes He speaks in the roar of victory, and other times in the whisper of comfort, but He always speaks. When you walk with that awareness, your entire outlook on life changes. You begin to move with confidence, knowing that you don't face anything on your own. Life will always test your sense of security. There will be days when darkness tries to convince you that you're forgotten. But faith reminds you that even in the silence, God is working. He walks beside you when the path is smooth, and He walks even closer when it's rough. His presence doesn't flicker in your weakness. It shines brighter through it. Every trial, every tear, every waiting season becomes a moment where His faithfulness is revealed in new ways. When you truly understand that God is with you, fear loses its hold. You stop questioning whether you'll make it and start declaring, with Him, I will overcome. That truth turns ordinary moments into sacred ones and fills every step of your journey with divine assurance. You are never alone, not for a second, because the Lord, who called you by name, walks with you today and always.